Répétez. Écoutez et répétez. Écoutez et répétez.
Amore. Amore.
Wo liegt Kuba? Wo liegt Mexiko? Wo liegt Kuba? Wo liegt Mexiko?
Amore. Amore. Amore.
Écoutez et répétez. Écoutez et répétez.
Love, 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 love.
Amore.
Toch niet door jullie zelf ontworpen? Door jullie zelf ontworpen, deze muziek?
Écoutez et répétez.
Amore. Amore.
Wo liegt Kuba? Wo liegt Mexiko? Wo liegt Kuba? Wo liegt Mexiko?
Amore. Amore, amore.
Écoutez, répétez. Écoutez et répétez. Écoutez et répétez.
Amore. Amore.
Wo liegt Kuba? Wo liegt Mexiko? Wo liegt Kuba? Wo liegt Mexiko?
I may just let this play in the background. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Jay's Analysis. I'm feeling very Max Headroom today. Max Headroom today. Because I'm reading an amazing book, The Pentagon's Brain, and this was sent to me by one of the beloved Jay's Analysis listeners about a year ago. I can't turn this down to just right. There we go. But The Pentagon's Brain, an amazing revelatory book. And even though it doesn't explicitly count in the Globalist Books series. Hush up, Russians. Hush! Hush your mouth, Russians, in the background. It does qualify in the Globalist Books series. And it qualifies because it is a book about the rise and history of DARPA. So we're going to be talking about tech. We're going to be talking about AI. We're going to be talking about the history of the RAND Corporation. This book was up for a Pulitzer for a while. It was a finalist. And because it's mainstream is why we're doing it. And this is Annie Jacobson's book, Pentagon's Brain, The Uncensored History of DARPA, America's Top Secret Military Research Agency. What is DARPA? Well, it's where we got the internet. It's where we got the Cold War. It's where we got the RAND Corporation. It's where we got the CIA. It's where we got MKUltra. They're all part of the same system. That's the big revelation here. I kind of like this dark aesthetic we got going here with the War Games camera in the background, or screens in the background. I kind of dig this. It needs some kind of background synthy stuff though, and I hope this isn't copyrighted. So we're letting some people roll in. We're going to have about 100 so far. That's good for just starting this up on the spot here. And already got some super chats coming in. Thanks, guys. Thank you for being the first super chat cuck. Ginger Sensations. Ginger Sensations. We're going to talk about AI today. So, what I thought would be fun to do is not just me talk about this big, gigantic book that I've been devouring. Who else does this for you? Who else devours these giant books and does book reports? Book reports for you. Maybe somebody does. Who's doing your homework for you? The Jay's Analysis nerds do your homework for you. You copy off us and you turn your tests in to Mark Harmon in summer school. I just watched Summer School, so that's on my mind. And by the way, Summer School is the same plot as Dangerous Minds. Did you notice that? Did you know? Why are we so blind to see that the something's ones we something been spending all our lives living in a gangster's paradise? Yes, Dangerous Minds is the same plot is Summer School, but with a bunch of brothers and Hispanic gangsters. What do you call the Hispanic gangsters? What's the name for Hispanic gangsters? Not Crips and all that, but they have a name. The cultural appropriation. Cholos. Yes, thank you. Dangerous Minds has Cholos and the brothers. And then Summer School is a bunch of 80s goofballs. So back before everything was gangsterized, which by the way is all out of the prison economy and the prison industrial complex. So what you start to see is that they're kind of turning the country into the model of the private prison industrial complex. And that's by design, because guess what? Guess what comes up in this book? And again, I had not read this until recently. but all of my suspicions are confirmed. Everything that I've been telling you was right for so many years. What did we just see with CBS is doing this presentation of Jack Parsons and Crowley in a series, CBS, called Strange Angel. That right there is a whole vindication of the entire thesis of my book, Esoteric Hollywood, which you can get signed copies at Jay's Analysis. And it proves the thesis of Esoteric Hollywood, doesn't it? It also proves my specific thesis about the Alien series, because the executive producer of the Parsons Crowley show, Strange Angel, is none other than Ridley Scott. So that proves, I would say, it suggests that the Alien series was consciously Crowleyan. 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 I'll do some experimental stuff here. Somebody said that my joke boomer tunes, they said it was experimental almost. So I may just break into song in the middle of these rants to entertain you. Now, we're going to analyze the movie War Games as well as this book, because I've been wanting to do War Games for so long, where Ferris Bueller hacks the Pentagon. And I knew that it would happen at the right time. And the right time was when I started delving into this. I got I'm almost halfway. And so since this is like 500 or 600 pages, we're probably going to break this up into 2 different analyses. But what better time to do the Pentagon's brain than when I just watched War Games again. And Ali Sheedy, boy does she look rough nowadays. She has like pill head mouth, if you've seen Ali Sheedy recently. Yes, I will analyze toys. What's up with all the Jay's Analysis nerds? Like 20 people saying, do Robin Williams toys. I will do that. That is a great one. There's just so many to do, and I forget. Consciously Crowleyan. Not me, by the way. I'm not consciously Crowleyan. I'm saying that Hollywood is, and the Alien series was. So, before we get to the meat of the book, we're going to talk about the movie. And the thesis is going to be that, as you know, fans of Jay's Analysis, you know that the thesis here, generally, is that the movies are basically true. Right? In a rough sense, the movies are basically true. War Games is roughly true. Obviously, there's a bunch of ridiculous stuff in War Games. Global thermonuclear war is not really true. I don't buy that the Cold War we were on the brink of, nukes, and if JFK could have got off the top of Marilyn Monroe, if JFK hadn't got off the top of Marilyn Monroe at the right time, we'd all be nuked. Because he was humping Marilyn Monroe. The president was humping Marilyn Monroe. But you're going to learn some interesting facts about JFK in this book, because he signed off on some projects. Thank you, Perrine, in support of the Globalist book series. Perrine Lance. The Holy Lance. I get so distracted when I try to do these. There's so many things to talk about. But War Games is basically true. And we're going to analyze how and to what degree. So, the movie starts off, if you recall, with this secret underground base that is one of the ICBM locales, right? Intercontinental Ballistic Missile locales. And there's a young Michael Madsen, if you don't recall. But yes, one of the 2 soldiers that mans one of the ICBM nuke sites with the keys is Michael Madsen, a young Michael Madsen before Kill Bill, long before Kill Bill. And this house is a decoy. It's on top of an underground facility where the ICBMs are. And we learn that this is a war game, hence war games. And the threat suddenly goes nuclear. We're DEFCON, whatever. We're nukes. We're nuclear, dude. And it's a psychological warfare drill, we later learn, to see if these guys will turn the nuke key. Right now, that's interesting because this is real. The military has done these kinds of things many times. I suspect that missile launches that we're gonna hit the Keys, right, Florida Keys, and then come on, I think that was probably a drill of the same sort. But in the situation here, we have NORAD, all right, which Annie Jacobson's going to go into the history of NORAD in her book. So we're going to get a good dose of underground bases, which there's not really been a mainstream publication about the truth of the underground bases that I'm aware of, except, I mean, it's in James Bamford's Puzzle Palace early on. He'll talk about the underground bases and to what degree they're real. He'll talk about Crystal City, which I think is in D.C. It's an entire city underground. But there's a lot of these, and they were all constructed during the Cold War. Continuity of government facilities, and this is all true. They're all real. There are countless underground bases everywhere. It's not a conspiracy theory. It is, in many ways, connected to these doomsday plans and doomsday scenarios. Now, a lot of that is psychological warfare, which we're going to see in the book. We'll get to that because she sources, the book very well. So far, I haven't seen anything. I mean, again, because it's mainstream, it's not going to tell you everything, obviously. But as you know, in the Globalist book series, we stick with mainstream books to demonstrate that everything that we think is conspiracy is actually real. I'm saying not everything. You know what I mean? Everything in my audience's sense. Like we are, I think, very tapped into approaching these things with a healthy dose of skepticism, ferreting out true conspiracies from false conspiracies. And so talking about DARPA, talking about AI, talking about the technocracy, that's something that obviously we've covered a lot at Jay's Analysis because it's in so many movies and it's very real. And that's what Annie Jacobson is going to show us. And so her book is basically the reality behind war games. That's what we're going to be talking about here. And yes, by the way, I will be taking super chat questions. Thank you to you guys who have already chipped in some super chats. That's awesome. I didn't even expect that. But if you want me to read your questions, then definitely throw me some super shekels, some mammons. Give me the mammons. So back to the movie. So what they learn in this drill is that 22% of the soldiers will not follow the order to nuke everybody. So a kind of Milgram experiment on a mass nuclear scale with Michael Madsen. He won't do it. I guess he didn't get his orders from Bill to kill Bill. So he didn't do it. But the guys at the Pentagon basically learned that most soldiers are not willing to engage in the use of large-scale weapons of mass destruction killing. Now, this is interesting because there were studies about how many soldiers a long time ago were willing to shoot other men. And actually, it was a very low percentage, a lot lower than you would think. A lot of soldiers in hand-to-hand combat out on the front lines tend to run away. They tend to not be willing to fire on fellow men. And so this is why the Pentagon developed video games, quite literally. So there's, again, here with video games, I'm not oversimplifying it. I realize there's a close connection between the public and the private sector. There's a partnership that's always been there. And we see this very clearly with the Pentagon's relationship to the development of video games. And that's why RAND Corporation, Military Industrial Complex have always worked hand in hand with giant tech corporations. Lockheed, Boeing, that's Raytheon. These groups essentially do the same stuff still. And Jacobson's actually going to show this. We're going to see, just like we saw in the Miles Copeland analysis. Remember, I can't believe that video didn't get 1 million views. There's so much in that analysis that I did of Miles Copeland's CIA exploits. He tells you so much, and nobody wants to listen to the real stuff. I don't know. What do people want to listen to? BS? I mean, again, who else is reading the entire memoirs of CIA operatives, Game of Nations? And he tells you about them developing all this computer stuff back in the 60s. Obviously, internet was developed in the 60s. We all know that. We're going to get into that in the... But game theory, as Miles Copeland talked about, is crucial here. And that's why video games are essentially just another manifestation of game theory, right? Nash, Beautiful Life, Russell Crowe, game theory, right? This is what Rand was studying because it's about winning. And guess what? Remember what we saw? Miles Copeland says, yes, actually, the report from Iron Mountain is true. Now, the actual, quote, report from Iron Mountain is a satire book about a real report of the real report from Iron Mountain. So they'll take real reports from Iron Mountain, put it into fiction, and it satirizes it. It sounds like the whole thesis of Jay's analysis in Esoteric Hollywood, doesn't it? Of course it does. War games. They'll take a real DARPA tech control grid, a real plan, and they'll put it into fiction, and they'll satirize it. War games. Now, I'm not telling you that we're going to be nuked by Russians or any of this nonsense. No. In fact, even Annie Jacobson's book's going to hint at a lot of the Cold War doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. There's a lot of things that just don't match up. And, you know, if you heard the recent interview that I did with Mark Hackard on Victor Rothschild as a Soviet agent, then that begins to explain the playing both sides, right? The duality, the dialectics of the Cold War as a managed conflict at the meta level. Right? That's not to say that there weren't guys on the ground, guys in the operations and the black ops and all this that were truly, sincerely fighting the commies. Of course they were. And there were truly Viet Cong getting sprayed with chemtrails. What? Yes. Viet Cong getting sprayed with chemtrails. I don't know if Annie Jacobson is aware of it, but her book actually defends and proves chemtrails. Thought that was a crazy conspiracy theory. Well, here's a mainstream book talking about it. Oh, they just... Well, I'm going to save that. I'm not going to spoil that yet. So, hey, great comment there. Umbrella Corporation. Yes. In fact, I just gave my talk at AV9, Alternative U9 in the UK. That's why I went to the UK. It was a lot of fun. If you guys have followed the streams, you know that. Now, Ian Crane, who puts on AV9, he owns the talks, the presentations, and he sells them, of course, on DVD. So if you want my presentation, you can buy that DVD from Ian Crane at his website for the next year or so. And then after a year, Ian Crane puts the full talk on his YouTube channel. So there's a lot of good talks, by the way, on his channel, because I actually watched some of the older AV presenters, because it was some of the same people that were there this year. Really, really good stuff, though, like really in-depth, especially about AI and transhumanism. And my talk was actually on Hollywood transhumanism. And war games made up a part of that. And thank you there, commenter, that you mentioned. I've got my shades on. I wear my sunglasses at night. Renovated to dust. Yes, the Umbrella Corporation is real. What is the Umbrella Corporation? It is DARPA, CIA, Pentagon, RAND, Military Industrial Complex, because they all are the same people. Okay? Don't think of these things as like different entities. They really all serve the same functions. And again, remember, if you want your questions read, you can donate with the Super Chat function. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. I would appreciate it. It helps me out. And I am, yes, back in the saddle. Back in the AI saddle, like that cartoon. Remember that cartoon? Silver Silver something. There was an 80s cartoon with AI robot cowboys in space. Very, very bizarre. Does anybody remember that? Anyway, but I get so way off track here. I love this stream of consciousness style though. That's my style, bro. Is to just stream, dude. We're live streaming my live stream of consciousness. And but what I was getting at was that it actually is true that the video game first-person shooters were actually designed to help people develop more of a trigger finger, a more ready willingness to shoot fellow men. And Brave Star, thank you, Sean. You got it. Brave Star. I remember watching that before, dreading going to school. At the time, my dad was in boot camp, and we lived in Chicago, and it was freaking cold as heck. And I hated it in Chicago, and I would have to wake up in the morning at like 5 a.m., and I get to watch Brave Star in the morning. And that dumbass clown, I don't know, my mind's not working tonight. That clown that everybody watched for Bozo and Brave Star would come on. Brave Star I thought was cool. Bozo, I don't know, something freaking weird about Bozo. What's up, Aaron? You live in Chicago? I lived in Waukegan, so technically I don't guess it was Chicago, but it was in the same vicinity, but it was a nightmare. But we're way off topic here. Brave Star. Pentagon video games segues to computers very well, because this movie encapsulates so many different ideas, and even mass depopulation and eugenics. Believe it or not, this actually comes up because the background scientist who develops the AI, he eventually adopts this genocidal, Kessler, Bertrand Russell, H.G. Wells, Royal Society, Malthusian attitude. And that's mentioned in the movies. That's kind of blowing me away that all of this is in this movie. But we'll get that in a minute. But I just wanted to make the point, though, that this movie even shows the intimate connection between the Pentagon, DARPA, and video games. This is in war games. Now, I didn't figure this out until very recently. There's some old videos actually on YouTube that are pretty good. I've got saved like way back in my liked videos about Pentagon video game connections. They're like 10-minute videos. You could probably find them. So I didn't learn about that until like 3 or 4 years ago. And here it is. Then you go back and you watch war games and you realize that's the whole point of this freaking movie, is that Ferris Bueller can hack into the Pentagon because he is so good at computer games. And we will eventually take on another movie from the 80s that was in the same vein, that has the same idea. Starfighter. Is that it? Starfighter? My mind is just not working today. I don't know. I can't recall anything. Starfighter. Where the guy, I think that's it, where the guy plays the video games and then that's it. The Last Starfighter. He does so good on video games that the shadow space government comes and recruits him to fly the video game drone type systems and to kill the bad guys. Well, what does that sound like? Preparation for drone warfare. And guess what? Drone warfare comes out of Vietnam and the Phoenix program and the Kim programs of Vietnam. All of the conspiracies that I have talked about are vindicated in these books and in this movie. And we will be, by the way, talking about a lot of this in Esoteric Hollywood 2. So there will be a significant section of that book towards the end of the book, Hollywood Transhumanism. We will be delving into all this. So Matthew Broderick, interestingly, is not just Ferris Bueller. He is also, as I think of it, I can't recall another film where we have the archetype, the new archetype, the creation of this new archetype here in 1983 of the teen hacker, right? Remember when we did Hackers, that ridiculous movie with Angelina Jolie and Matthew Lillard and Prodigy playing throughout the entire movie? If you haven't listened to that analysis, it's pretty fun. Go listen to that. It's the one I did with Black Panther and Red Sparrow. Cold War stuff again. Red Sparrow, Hackers. Well, War Games, Cold War stuff again. And Matthew Broderick is the archetype of the teen hacker. Like, he's in his room and he's dialing in with like a rotary dial modem to the Pentagon, which is ridiculous. But by the way, who knew about modems in the 80s? Very few people, right? What is the old internet? The old internet hookup sound. Remember this? Flashback. Hackers. War Games. Whoa, dude. Man, you listen to that shit now and it's like, that is kind of eerie, dude. It's like, it sounds like aliens, like, you know, AI aliens talking to one another or something. That's you could invent some conspiracy about that. It would be the next big conspiracy straight out of, you know, COINTELPRO or whoever designs Flat Earth and all that bullshit. Like, the old original dial-up sounds are alien AI communicating. Call George Norrie. Where is George? Get me on Coast to Coast right now, because I've invented the hottest frickin' conspiracy theory. Yes, dubstep. By the way, you said dubstep there, Truth Seeker. Dubstep is the language of the AI aliens. Bam! That's how you create fake Pentagon, Cass Sunstein, cognitive infiltration conspiracy theories. Right, they should hire me. I could come up with better. I'm joking, but I could definitely come up with something better than that Coney 2012 campaign. Remember that? That was hilarious. So Matthew Broderick is the archetype of the hacker. And can anybody in the chat, by the way, correct me? Here's a challenge. Chat challenge. Dun, dun, dun. I have a little segment here. Chat challenge. Can you think of an earlier archetype in movies of a teen hacker? Real Genius? That's after 83. So Real Genius won't count. They're not exactly hackers either. Val Kilmer's not a hacker in Real Genius. Does anybody have any suggestions? An earlier... I think, yes, Flat Earth is a Cass Sunstein cognitive infiltration thing. Now that I think about it, Mandela Effect... That one. What's another stupid one? Well, I was just talking about this earlier today. Like the three really stupid popular conspiracy theories. They've got to be, you know, thought up in some Cass Sunstein think tank group. I don't know. I don't remember, but can you name an older? You know what? Cloak and Dagger is a good one. It's obscure. Dabney Coleman. Boom. I know what you're thinking there. But is it older than 83? Cloak and Dagger. By the way, Cloak and Dagger is awful as a freaking movie, dude. That movie is fucking terrible, dude. It's so shitty. Nope. Good try there, Truth Seeker. But Cloak and Dagger is 1984, and War Games is 1983. Terminator 2, Edward Furlong, T2, T2 is not, T2 is like what, 85, 86, Terminator 2, I'm getting some tech company, no, Terminator 2. No, Terminator 2 is actually, that's got to be like 87, dude. Now that I think about it. No, 91. Get out of here, dude. Terminator 2. 91. So, let's see. Tron. Is it a hacker movie? Kind of. It would beat War Games. It's kind of a hacker movie. But I don't get the teen hacker archetype out of Tron. That's a good guess, though. Goonies. There's no hackers in Goonies, dude. What are you talking about? Data? Is Data a hacker? Yeah, you could count Data as a hacker, but Goonies is after 1983. Dude, you guys are going crazy. J is better than Rand Corporation. I hope so. I cracked the code. So, do you want to play a game? Do you want to play a game? I'm trying to do my robot alien AI voice. The Conversation, Gene Hackman. That is a good. By the way, you know, if there is a Hollywood Decoded season 2, I already wrote that episode for The Conversation. We have a whole Gene Hackman The Conversation episode ready to go, but I don't know if there's going to be a Hollywood Decoded season 2. Thoughts. Yes. Tron thoughts. Trad thoughts. What about Tron thoughts? That's virtual thoughts, by the way. What's a Tron thought? A virtual thought. So nobody's beat me yet. Has anybody come up with a Bowman doesn't count as a teenage hacker, dude. Bowman is a bot. Is he? Do we even know if he's a teenager? There's no teenage hackers in They Live. That doesn't work. Thermites. It's not a movie. The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. I remember that. Does that have a teen hacker in it? The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. 1969. Oh yeah, that's that one with Kurt Russell, where it's like a old Disney Kurt Russell movie. Is he a hacker? Dexter Riley, Kurt Russell, or should I say Jack Burton. You find yourself on a dark and stormy night. Your back's against the wall. Some guy's got you against the wall. He says, "Hey Jack, have you paid your dues?" Tell him, "Yeah, I paid my dues. Check's in the mail." My Jack Burton for you. Kurt Russell cannot afford to buy a computer. The students persuade him to. They use a gambling ring for their operations. Is he a hacker, though? We need to know if he's a hacker. He wins a prize. Oh, okay. You might have me on The Computer Who Wore Tennis Shoes if you can show that he's a hacker. Short Circuit, yeah, but Short Circuit is after War Games. I can do a perfect Johnny Five, by the way. Whee! Oh my gosh! By the way, Short Circuit actually does have some weird esoteric stuff in it. Really shitty movie, but shitty in the fun way. What does he call that chick? I forget Ali Sheedy's character in that, because I can do the voice perfect. What is her name? My mind just doesn't work tonight. Her name is Astoria, by the way, which is interesting because that's Goonies territory. Stephanie, wee. That's exactly how Johnny Five talks. Oh man, he's like a retarded robot too. He's like a retardobot. We were way off of how are we talking about Short Circuit here? We were having fun. Trying to come up with an older teenage hacker. Brain Scan with Edward Furlong. Come on, dude, you gotta cut Lawnmower Man. This is 1983 movie. You guys are telling me 90s movies. I want a teen hacker prior to 83. That's the challenge. And I'm thinking he might have me with the computer who wore tennis shoes, but I can't remember if he's a hacker or not. You want to fight me in real life? Why why glaucoma do you want to fight me? If you got glaucoma, dog, you gonna lose a fight. Stupid question. Move on. It's not a stupid question. We're having fun because it's actually relevant to predictive programming, because if you listen to the hacker analysis, the idea of the teen hacker was prepping you for the internet. It was prepping that younger generation who is going to live into the stage in which the internet would become, everywhere. We would see total saturation of the net. This is what ARPA and DARPA planned. So don't tell me that it's a stupid question. It's not. Weird Science is after. It's 85 or 6, so that doesn't count. It's after. So it does matter when a movie puts in the first archetypal type character like this. And so if we don't count Kurt Russell, then I think War Games counts. And War Games was a mediocre success. I think it was a $12 million budget. I don't think it was a flop. I haven't been able to figure out what it actually made at the box office. But anyway, they knew what they were doing. And what I'm trying to explain to you is that if you can actually go watch old episodes of Airwolf. When I was a kid, I remember watching Airwolf. There's Airwolf clips where he talks about the internet and hooking up to the internet. Now, Airwolf was quite obviously some kind of, Pentagon consulted show, Black Hawks and all that. There's other shows where, you have Kit, right? Knight Rider. Kit is basically an AI car. There's probably Knight Rider episodes about the internet. Nothing surprises me anymore. That people found NSA being exposed in Rockford Files. NSA in Rockford Files. That is insane. I think it was Chris and John put that on Hoaxbusters back in the day. But you can probably find that video on YouTube. Look up Rockford Files and the NSA. Now, again, there's no way this is coincidence. This is just insane. So whoever said stupid question, get out of here. You're a stupid question. Your face is a stupid question. The more sophisticated software, which is interesting, there's this line that Ferris Bueller has. He says the more sophisticated software is the software that's able to present itself as helping you more. How can I help you? And it was kind of an innocuous line, but as I thought about it, yes, that actually makes perfect sense, because all of this AI that we're going to be sold, that we're going to be conditioned into, which is what we're already seeing with Google Voice and Alexa and all this crap in your house, and eventually it's going to be a little rolling around Alexa that comes to different rooms and brings you your beers or whatever, all of which were in 80s movies as well. Go watch Space Camp, which is terrible, but there's a great line about Kate Capshaw's boosters. That's one of the worst stupid lines that I remember from Space Camp. But you see a young Joaquin Phoenix in Space Camp, and guess what the titles credit his name as? Leaf. He's titled in the credits as Leaf Phoenix. So I guess he changed his name to Joaquin. I don't know. But in Space Camp, Joaquin is a young, annoying, chunky kid called Leaf Phoenix. But we're told in War Games that the more sophisticated AI is the one that's able to service you better. And that's what we're going to start getting with these AI programs that are rolled out. In my talk that I did at AV9, I did some research on this and actually found some of the more recent bots that they're rolling out, which are quite literally R2-D2 style things. It's like Alexa, but R2-D2, and he follows you around the house. It's like Roomba mixed with R2D2 mixed with Alexa. And he does all kinds of stuff. And by the way, he also spies on you and keeps up with everything. And it's going to be tied into insurance, and he's going to watch you, and he's going to watch what you do and how much you eat and how much energy, how many times you flush when you go TT, and he's going to regulate you, and he's going to tattletale on you. You're going to have your own little living R2D2 spy. And by the way, Jacques Attali said that too. He says you will willingly accept all this for convenience, and then it will be turned on you to imprison you. That's what Jacques Attali says in the book. So, gamification is a big aspect of this movie. I talked about that in my AV9 talk. If you're not familiar with gamification, look it up. Similar to the idea that
Max Kaiser has been talking about gamification. Gamification.
Gamification is the virtual gulag, right? The rise of the virtual to replace the real. And this is the idea of, in the future, since there will be the complete saturation of the Internet of Things, when you brush your teeth, your RFID toothbrush will register how many points you get for brushing your teeth that day on your insurance, analysis or whatever. And you'll get 3 points because you brush your teeth, and you get health points, and then you have your Fitbit chip or whatever that follows you. You did more walking and exercise, so you get 5 points for that. And so everything is going to be registered and regulated by the AI, tied into your insurance and the medical industrial complex. Can you believe that is the world that we're entering? And that's what they all talk about. It's in this book. It's in Jacques Attali's book, all the way back to H.G. Wells, Bertrand Russell. Shape of Things to Come. This was a big part of my lecture at AV9. Shape of Things to Come. It tells it all. I can't stand H.G. Wells. I cannot stand that guy. But did you know H.G. Wells was 1 year off in predicting World War II? The Shape of Things to Come was written in 1936, but because he was an insider, he was aware of the Royal Society Masonic plans. He knew that there would be World War II very soon, and he was only off by 1 year. So, autistic nerds come up in this. Now, the computer nerd is, like we said, something going back to Disney computer movies. And by the way, obviously Disney was tied into the military-industrial complex the whole time. But we see these weird autistic computer geeks in war games, and that was something I hadn't really noticed in anything that early. Just throwing that one out there. The autistic 80s nerd makes his debut premiere in war games. And the other, the sort of the fat, weird computer nerd, not Matthew Broderick and not the autistic one, but the fat, nerdy one, he talks about the backdoor technology into all of the Pentagon tech. And he says that the corporations designed the backdoor technology. This is the Promise backdoor technology that we've seen written about publicly in Crossing the Rubicon, the Michael Ruppert book. Several chapters on that there. The backdoor Promise technology was written about in Inslaw's Octopus in Wired Magazine a long time ago. It's been in many books since. Probably will be in Jacobson's book. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far yet. I'm only up to post-Vietnam, halfway through, so we'll see. But it is mentioned in war games that there is backdoor technology. And if you are wondering what that is, watch the movie Sneakers with Robert Redford, because that is 1990, and it talks about the NSA's backdoor technology. So we have the goal of creating self-learning AI is essentially what the scientist, the Falcon character, who's the scientist, he designs this this AI that can supposedly think, which it's not thinking. But if you're a reductionistic materialist, you can just call any sort of process that goes on thinking. which is ridiculous. Just redefine the words, the same thing that the social justice warriors do to vindicate changing your biological sex. Just redefine the words, and by the way, that's why I identified as a boomer. You can identify as anything. I self-identify as a boomer now. And it's ageist if you don't accept that I'm a boomer. So the movie is, again, Cold War psyop. It even references Disney in the movie, by the way. I don't think it's a Disney film. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. But this is the funny thing, too. This part's great. So when they realize that the Pentagon has been hacked just for fun by Matthew Broderick, Ferris Bueller, they decide that it can aid the Cold War narrative. And so they start drawing up this fictional narrative that he is a Soviet recruit. And they say, oh, everyone who's a disaffected teen is liable to KGB recruitment. So they feed it into this Cold War narrative. And really what's going on is that the ICBMs were hooked up to the internet. Come on, give me a break. They're not going to hook freaking ICBMs up to the internet. That would be a totally separate web, right? If there was even such a connecting of those technologies to some kind of internet. There's a whole separate other government type internet. They're not going to hook the freaking ICBMs up to, Ferris Bueller's dial-up. But in the movie they do. And again, it's illustrative because they create the idea that, throw it into the Cold War narrative. He's a Soviet recruit. How ridiculous. And ironically, in the film, though, you have another prevalent theme in the 80s, which is that the kids know best. Right? This is something, if you go and listen to a great podcast I did with John Adams called Occult 80s and Comedy Arcana. A couple years ago, we did a really cool podcast. It's on YouTube. And we talked about 80s films and trends in 80s films, because a lot of the trends in the 80s films are actually selling ideas and preparing that generation for the changes to come. And one of those trends was not just the rebellious teen, that's been in everything, but the idea that the teens actually know way more than the adults. Now, I'm sure there were some movies prior to the 80s that did this, but it's everywhere in 80s movies, constantly, right? The teens know it all, right? They frickin' solve the giant Masonic labyrinth of the Goonie, One-Eyed Willie puzzle, and none of the adults have any clue what's going on. They're totally oblivious. But the Goonies can solve the giant Masonic riddle. And by the way, it is a Masonic riddle. Read my Goonies analysis. It's also a Rube Goldberg machine. So, the last thing I wanted to mention about the scientist character in War Games is that he becomes a radical, naturalistic, nihilistic, Darwinistic, materialist Malthusian. And he says, I finally realized that since the AI that we're coming up with is just a product of evolution, it's superior to us, supposedly, and therefore it can kill us. And so since it's the next stage in evolution, we should worship it, and it's destined to wipe out humanity. You see, so this is really the actual mindset of the global elite, quite literally. The golem that they're creating, and yes, Jacques Attali calls it a golem. The global brain is just like the synthetic global fake economy, right, based on fiat debt. It's a golem. It's not real, but everybody thinks it's real. The global brain is not a real brain, but everybody thinks it's real because they believe the propaganda that an advanced computer is no different than the random processes that evolved to be the human mind. It's all just random. And that's what the Malthusian scientist behind the AI that he's developed, that's what he believes. And he says, I'm just being Darwinian. And he says, there's a great line. He says, I realize that since death is natural, it's only natural that the AI eventually leads to global thermonuclear war, and we all just die off. The human species, he says, is destined to be extinct and replaced by the bots. Now, that is so absurd that, okay, I'm not going to go into all this, but go listen to the talk on Kessler, Ghost in the Machine. You have to listen to my full Kessler talk because I completely dissect this and deconstruct it. And listen to my talk with Tim Kelly about Luciferianism, H.G. Wells, and Arthur Kessler, right? The death cult. Because I dissect it there, I think, completely. I think that's one of the better talks I've ever done, actually, is the Luciferian death cult talk. Because that really sums it all up. And that's in this movie. This guy is like a Luciferian death cultist. And who else better to convince him of the error of his ways than Ferris Bueller? And, of course, Ferris Bueller, with Ali Sheedy, convinces him to become a kid again, to become a Goonie. And they outwit both the Pentagon, NORAD, Cheyenne Mountain Complex, and Dabney Coleman. So there you go, Cloak and Dagger again with Dabney Coleman. So did H.G. Wells predict 1940? No, 44, 45. He's off, I think, 1 year, 44, 45. I forget. I get mixed up on the exact date. I was so tired after the plane flight when I was reading all that. I had to do my talk at 9 in the morning. So after a 9-hour flight, and then like 2 days later, you do a 9 a.m. talk. It's pretty intense. It was very challenging, but it was fun. It was worth it. So, War Games. I don't know. What do you guys think? That's my analysis of War Games. And of course, you know, the good guys win in War Games. There's not really much else to be said about that movie, but there was much more going on than I expected. And actually, it had been probably 3 years since I watched War Games. And I thought, I've got all that knocked out. Everything in War Games, I already know anything. No, I was wrong. There was a lot more in War Games than I expected. I don't know. It's just crazy. What do you guys think? Is it crazy? Glaucoma. Theo Glaucoma says, go on JF show. I can't go on shows unless I'm invited on, dude. But by the way, yes, I will be going on the Worski Live. Worski may be attempting to get that revved back up again. He's taken a little bit of a break and done Kumite. Andy is going to rev up Worski Live, and I'm gonna sit in for a guest co-hosting session. We're gonna test the water, see how it goes, see if people like it. And what better way to test this than we was kings and shit debate. We was kings and shit. That's what we're gonna do. Now, it's not me debating. I'm going to be there to help facilitate, co-host, and give smart-ass comments, and I'm sure there will be quite a few laughs in a We Was Kangs debate between Radio and, yes, this black dude's... I'm not dissing black dudes, I'm just saying this black dude spells it R-A-I-D-I-O. Radio 1. Does he think that's how radio is spelled? Is he referring to Cuba Gooding Jr. in Radio? I don't know. I will probably ask him those things. In fact, I might even do this co-hosting gig episode as Koopa Troofa, right? Would this guy like lose his mind if I did that? It would be really funny if I did that, though. So I'm going to be on Worski Live Friday. Here this guy's getting mad. Bro, my name is the Glaucon Khan. It's based on Glaucon from the Republic. Yeah, I have a whole talk on Plato's Republic. I know who Glaucon is. It's just a joke, dude. You gotta roll with it, man. When I'm up here, you know, talking smack, being goofy, I'm gonna call you glaucoma. I should go on there and be like, hey man, you talking about we was kings. What you think about glaucoma from the Republic? Who your favorite character is from the Republic? You like glaucoma? Bro, you smoke them spliffs, you get rid of that glaucoma. But yeah, we're going to be talking We Was King. It's going to be hilarious. I'm going to ask, it's not going to just be dumb either, by the way. I'm going to actually ask serious questions. We're going to, because I believe that the We Was King's black Israelite nonsense, which is so stupid. That's so dumb. That's like a COINTELPRO type thing too, right? I mean, every group has their own little kind of mythological, specially tailored God myth for them. And Nazism is that. It's a specially tailored God myth made up by Alfred Rosenberg and other people. It's not real. The Nazi mythos is not true. If you're not aware of that, I can't help you. So it's no different than the mythos that's crafted and given to black people of we are superior. A great example of this is the mythos for blacks in Nation of Islam. Go listen to my interview with James Kelly on Nation of Islam. And we dissect that perfectly there. And guess what? It's the same. The tailored mythology that you're a special god race and that white devils, that's literally where it comes from, Nation of Islam, white devil stuff. Farrakhan and Elijah Muhammad. It's obviously a completely made up fake social engineering tool. Just as dumb as Scientology and all the other ones. And it's just as made up as the Nazi mythos of the Teutonic god people and whatever bullcrap from Helena Blavatsky and her made up cycles of ancient Atlantis and all that crap. Dyerism god myth. But it's the same god mythos. And they all tell you that join our cult and your race, your genetic lineage is the true God race. It's ridiculous. Come on. Jesus, no, he was not an Aryan. Oh my gosh. Don't be so gullible, dude. Like, Jesus was an Israelite. That's central to the message of the gospel. So the Christian identity. Christian identity. That's another great example of this. Just as stupid. British Israelite. Just as preposterous. It's the same dumb heresy over and over and over and over. Go read the book of Isaiah and then listen to my talk on the gospel and the gospels and their veracity in the book of Mark. That's had like 10,000 views. Go watch that. And you'll see that the book of Isaiah shows that the fulfillment of all the prophecies is in Christ. And it's not some freaking made up tribe of Mormon weirdos that floated over here that's only recorded in the Book of Mormon. Don't be so gullible, dude. That's not true. That's for retards. I hope that was a joke. Thank you, John. Yes, I was praying. I was like, please do not let this be a real Jesus was an Aryan person. But here's a weird thing. There's an Episcopal cathedral in Memphis by this weird artist. I can't remember his name, but he designed these really kind of creepy paintings at this Episcopal cathedral. And one of the paintings has the Aryan Jesus, which is very bizarre. And then there's another painting in that same cathedral of the Archangel Michael with a scroll that says E = MC squared. Just completely ridiculous and bizarre. But that artist, who is obviously a Hermeticist, because in his paintings in this cathedral, you can look it up. Look up some Episcopal cathedral in Memphis, probably the biggest one. And it has all this creeper art in it. And he's a famous guy. You'll find his stuff. There's a famous painting of Augustine in there being baptized. Then you read about this guy and it's Hermetic stuff. And guess what? He painted a bunch of stuff for Pius XII. Yes, Hermeticism alive and well in the Vatican. And by the way, that is not proper iconography. Jesus is Hebrew for a reason, and he looks the same in Orthodox icons because Jesus wasn't Asian Jesus. Jesus wasn't black Jesus, right? Roman Catholics just go crazy with this and paint Asian Jesus. That's Gnostic, dude. Jesus came in space and time as a Hebrew. And that's why Orthodox icons always paint him the same way. And that's why it leads to Gnostic heresy and the denial of our actual genetic lineages, right? To go into these dumb heresies and to try to say, Jesus was a chink. Jesus was an Asian. Jesus was a black man. No, he wasn't. I mean, it's not even worth refuting. It's so stupid. Jay, thank you so much for what you do. Randy, thank you. Randy Churchill, I've learned a lot about Orthodoxy from you. I appreciate how you break down things and explain them. God bless. Thank you, Randy. God bless you. And guess what? Wasn't my analysis of Jordan Peterson correct? Yes, it was. And how many hundreds and hundreds of Jordan Peterson people got furious at me and went off on me and sent me a lot of hate mail. It's okay. I don't care. And guess what? I was right, wasn't I? Because Jordan Peterson's worldview is completely incoherent. And it shouldn't be that difficult to figure out. Right? It's not that hard to figure out that all these things don't mesh together. Now, maybe Jordan Peterson is on a journey. I hope so. I hope he comes our way. He's obviously interested in Orthodoxy. He's become very popular. I think he's, several grades above my level of popularity. So I don't have the ability to set up anything with Jordan Peterson. A couple of people have tried it. Don't think that's ever going to happen. Whatever. I'm not worried about it. I'm not here to kowtow to somebody because they're famous, and I wasn't mean to him. I was fair to him. My hope is that Jordan Peterson converts to Orthodoxy. Obviously, the point in me making a video critiquing classical liberalism and pointing out how it's incompatible with Orthodox theology is so that if perchance Jordan Peterson watched that video, he would see my argumentation as solid. But turns out Jordan Peterson has worked on UN panels on biodiversity and sustainability, which translated into common parlance is depopulation. Now, maybe that was in the past. Maybe Jordan Peterson no longer believes that. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll see what Jordan Peterson says. But, I mean, if we're just going to get more Darwin, Freud, and Carl Jung, sorry. Fail. Darwin, Freud, Carl Jung. There might be some insight. There's insights in Carl Jung. I don't mind Carl Jung. But it's not going to get us to where we want to go. And as for Vox Day, I have seen a couple of the Vox Day videos critiquing Jordan Peterson. There was a common listener who claims that he's messaged Vox Day, and Vox Day says he is too busy to do a conversation. So that wasn't my initiative. That was a common listener trying to set that up. That's usually how things get set up, is common listeners set things up. But I don't have time to chase down people if they're not interested. So I was open to a conversation. He's too busy. That's cool. Maybe one day. I don't know if Andy's doing a Thursday show. He said that he wants to start up Worski Live on Friday. He may choose to do a Thursday show as well, but I will be. Yes, as I said earlier a few minutes ago, I'll be co-hosting as guest host with Andy, the rebooted Worski Live. And we're going to see how that goes. That'll be Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Andy's channel. So, for the second half of this, which will be available tomorrow to Jay's Analysis subscribers, you can subscribe at Jay's Analysis for $4.95 a month, $60 a year. We will be covering the first chunk of this book. I will give my analysis, my book report. We'll see that it ties in squarely with war games, and we'll see what exactly was true. We're going to see chemtrails. How does that tie into this? Well, it does. And guess what? I posited long ago that this was all connected to MK Ultra. AI was connected to MK Ultra, which is connected to Disney, which is connected to the Pentagon, which is connected to the military industrial complex and the CIA and DARPA, and it's all the same thing. It's all the same beast. I posited that in my book. It's in my book. A lot of people bitched at me about that. A lot of people said, you're crazy, you're a conspiracy theory. Oh, it's in this mainstream book. But you see, I'm not an acceptable mainstream person, so I'm not going to get any kind of Pulitzers or anything like that. It's fine with me. I don't care. I have fun doing what I do. It's much more fun to tell the truth than it is to try to impress a bunch of idiot liberal establishment people who hate you anyway. Why would you care about impressing people that hate you? That's ridiculous. Right? This is why the people want to adopt Darwinism, because they think that it'll impress all of these naturalistic, reductionistic atheists to accept your watered down, pathetic Christianity, your churchianity, and it's not. It's not. It makes you a clown. So if you want to send super chats, I do see a lot of questions there. Hey, sorry, but I make money through doing the super chats, through Jay's Analysis, through setting up tutoring. A lot of people this week have asked about the tutoring. Yes, it's still going. We can set up the tutoring sessions. I'm still doing it pretty frequently. I have more time now that I'm back from the UK and from speaking at Alternative View. So if you want to set up some tutoring sessions to deal with philosophy, theology, history, church history, biblical theology, whatever you're interested in, we can do that. Logic, Plato's Republic, Glaucon. If you want to go listen to my Plato talks, I have 8 or 9 lectures on the totality of the Republic, and I have lectures on many of Plato's dialogues. You can go check those out. Shauna Sawyer, wow, thank you. 20. The day the earth stood still. Klaatu, yes. Klaatu varata niktu. That is a good one. That's one that we definitely need to get to, because it is all about global government, right? The aliens, the threat of the aliens is going to lead us to global government, which, again, it's not the aliens are real. It's that in psychological operations, the alien is tied in the consciousness of the target population to the outsider. So you'll see in the Cold War, World War II and Cold War, the alien threat is usually connected to something related to the military saving us. And I'm not making this up. This was actually studied, Princeton Radio Research Project. There's a section in my book about E.T., Hadley Cantrell, invaders from Mars, that this is being studied for psychological warfare. So the Orson Welles stuff, right, that's all studied for the same purposes. And it's to associate in the target audience's mind the external threat with the alien, as in the German or the Japanese or the Russian in the Cold War. That's the alien threat. So if you're terrified in an alien movie, right, the outside invader, invaders from Mars, right? By the way, Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a Cold War psyop theme. Comes up in here. I told you that. And why did I come to that conclusion? Because I watched Twilight Zone, the old episodes, and I noticed in the credits that it said, made in consultation with the Department of Defense. And I thought, why were Twilight Zone episodes made in consultation with the DoD? And that's because of what I'm telling you. But thank you, Shauna. We will cover the day the earth stood still. Is Klaatu Christ? I think that kind of an alien being is usually, they will take the Christ mythos and they'll transfer it into some kind of alien type savior all the time. Yeah, you see that throughout all kinds of stuff. That was a big thesis of my book in regard to the Spielberg section, the H.G. Wells section about aliens. Self-destruct sequence, $5. Thank you. Sean Shadow Banadon? Shadow Steve Bannon. Jay, is Miles Mathos legit? Seems like too many brilliant opinions from one person. I think Miles Mathis goes way overboard with fakery. I read a couple articles 4 years ago and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then it's like, oh, everything's fake. Oh, no, I think he goes too far. After a certain point, I don't remember what I was reading. There was something I was like, no, this is not fake. I don't remember exactly what it was, but no, I quit paying attention to Miles Mathis after the third or fourth article. So I gave him a fair hearing. Not saying that everything he says is wrong. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I don't know if it's a psyop. I just quit paying attention to it. I mean, I have limited time. I want to focus on the work I do. So a lot of times I will give something a kind of a hearing for a period. And I'll be like, that's not. And usually my intuition is right. When I follow my intuition, I have pretty attuned senses to sensing bullshit because I've had a lot of bullshit thrown at me over the years. You get pretty adept at sensing these things. Doesn't mean I'm infallible. I make mistakes at times, but I've put a pretty good number of years now into psyops and understanding how this stuff works. You can see an entire shelf here devoted to just that. So I would say everything fakery. There's a good chance that's part that maybe that's what it was. That was the other Cass Sunstein cognitive infiltration fake conspiracy theory thesis, was Mandela, flat Earth, and everything fake. I think those are really good contenders there for the same psychological operations unit, wherever that's coming out of, Fort Huachuca or wherever. I think Fort Huachuca does a lot of online psyops. If I remember, John Young from Cryptome had a talk where he discusses that. And they will do that. They will, it's a kind of wargaming, right? They'll come up with these drills, fake psychological operation scenarios. Remember Jade Helm? I told you Jade Helm was fake, and I was right. I told you there wasn't going to be martial law. I told you that was a bunch of watching what you would do in response to this fake conspiracy theory. Oh, guess what? That was at the beginning of War Games, wasn't it? Yes, it was. So, yes. Again, not bragging, but I'm somebody who did master's work on psychological warfare and fiction. That's what my master's work is on. So I know this from a real academic setting. I'm not a bullshitter. I know what I'm talking about. Anthony, thank you for your 20 books. 20 bucks. I'll take 20 books too. And you say a new subscriber to your site. Love your work. Thank you. Looking forward to hearing more from you. Really appreciate it, Anthony. I'm humbled that you would donate. Andrew, thank you. I'm humbled as well. Which globalist book do you recommend reading first? I get this question a lot. I'm going to say the best place to start is you could go two ways. You could go the quick, easy read route and do H.G. Wells' Open Conspiracy, because you could read that in a day, few hours. It's not a long book, and you see it all laid out. It's all laid out right there in 150, 180 pages maybe. That's one route very quick, very easy. If you want a little more depth, a little more meat to start out with in, say, a 300 to 400 page book, read Anglo-American Establishment by Quigley, which is a shorter, more precise analysis of the globalists from the author of Tragedy and Hope. Right. So when you've done one of two or two of those, like if you've done them both, I would say next graduate on to my talks on Tragedy and Hope. So I covered the 1,300 page tome for you. I read the entire thing, and I did a series of 8 or 9 lectures on that 2 years ago. Everybody appreciates that. Everybody loves that. Nobody else has done that. Nobody else has given you an entire course on the totality of that book. Who else is reading 500-page books for you? Who else read the 800-page, 700-page Malachi Martin book for you? Who else reads 300-page Miles Copeland books for you? I mean, I'm sitting here surrounded by... I'm not bragging. I'm just saying nobody else is doing that for you. And yet so many people just talk shit to me. So many people talk. Jordan Peterson doesn't do this, does he? No. Who has read Ghost in the Machine and did an entire book report on it for you? Who did an entire book report on the Republic? So the shit talkers talk shit, I think, because they can't hang. And that's just the way it is. Not my fault you can't hang. Who read this entire tome here? 300 pages of Jacques Attali and his futurist bullshit. I did. That's who. And who's going to keep reading globalist books one by one by one by one? Me. I will. Anyway, thank you. So that's what I would say. I would say read Open Conspiracy. If you want fiction, read Brave New World and go listen to my talk on Brave New World. That's pretty badass, man. I'm not bragging, but I think I nailed Brave New World. Really proud of that. I did that about 3 years ago. It was one of the first talks that I did that really kind of got some traction. Got shared on a lot of sites. The audio files did. So 7, 8, 10,000 back then. 3 years ago, that was like, whoa, I'd never gotten that much on audio back then. Now that's kind of the norm for YouTube. So we've had a lot of growth. That's good news. But read Brave New World if you want to start there. If you want to start fiction, I'm saying read Brave New World and listen to my Brave New World talk. If you want to start faction, do the H.G. Wells or the Quigley. But if you go to my site, there's a recommended reading list, and you can go down to the Globalist book series, which I need to update. I haven't updated that in a couple months. We've done quite a few Globalist books since then. So thank you, Anthony and Randy. Randy Churchill, have you done a book review on ancestral sin? Yes. Well, it's not a book review, but I read a bunch of Romanides. We covered this in a few talks now. I have an essay. It took me 9 years to solve the problem with Romanides, and ultimately it wasn't about ancestral sin. I've read that book twice. I don't have a talk on it, but what you want to read is my paper on Logos and Logoi and Romanides. There I get to the bottom of the issue with the problem with Romanides, which is that he does not believe that there's any analogia at all. And he thinks that's the Orthodox position. The Orthodox position is not that there's no analogia. It's that the analogies that we make match up to the logoi or to the energies. The logoi are energies, by the way. That is the patristic teaching, and that solves the problem in Romanides. And if you follow Romanides' position out, it means that you can't speak about God at all, which is dumb. And it's not even worth... It took me 9 years dealing with Romanides' disciples to come to that, to solve that issue. A lot of heat and heartache on the way to solving that 9-year dilemma. But I solved it in that paper. And it's solved also in Father Florovsky's essay, Creation and Creaturehood. So I understand what you're saying with ancestral sin, and I know it sounds like I'm dodging it, but the ultimate issue in Romanides isn't about ancestral sin. It's about Scripture, because he says that the way that he formulates his view of ancestral sin is because he does not believe that Scripture can convey the Word of God. And that's because nothing in human linguistics or symbolism can actually match up to the uncreated. And this is what he calls the sickness of religion. There's some truth in that, but it's a perversion because he goes too far with it, because he mistakenly thinks that you can't speak about God at all in signs and symbols, because that would be some version of analogia, and all sickness of religion is the analogia. Well, guess what? All of the Eastern Fathers teach the analogia. So that's not the sickness of religion. So stop worshiping Romanides, cult leader out there, and cult followers who slavishly follow this ridiculous view. It's ridiculous. I can show you countless quotes from Basil, from St. John Damascus, from all the Eastern Fathers, from St. Gregory of Nyssa against Eunomius, where he talks about analogia and using terms for God, and they do match up to a sense. They don't exhaust him, but they do match up in some degree, not to the essence, but to the energies. We shouldn't even have to debate this. It makes me really mad because I spent 9 years arguing with somebody who was a friend of mine over this. Anyway, that's the root of the Romanides issue, and I spent 9 years on it. I know what I'm talking about. And I've read his other works too. I've read Patristic Theology. I've read his papers on Cambisi and all that stuff. I get heated when we talk about that. But by the way, your question about Augustinian original sin, yes, actually, there is a difference between the Orthodox view of original sin. We do believe in an ancestral sin, okay? I'm just saying that Romanides is not the final word on this, okay? Romanides is wrong. Augustine is wrong. There's a different, more accurate Orthodox position. Actually, the Orthodox Study Bible just lays it out very simply. Early on in the Orthodox Study Bible, there's a discussion of ancestral sin, and lays it out fine. Shouldn't be a problem. But we don't accept the Augustinian view, which unfortunately does still have taints of Manichaeanism in it. Jay, I'm doing an essay on NGOs and democracy, human rights and asylum. Any light on the matter? Yes. Listen to the Miles Copeland talk. Listen to last week's Atali, Brief History of the Future. Listen to the interview with Interregnum, Arctos, where I covered Syria and NGOs. Those are 3 talks that you could listen to right now that deal with that pretty extensively. Jay, I'm reading Occult Renaissance Church of Rome by Hoffman. Is a black pill for the trad cats. Yep. Thank God, finally. This is what I was hoping for the last 8 years, 10 years. A black pill for the trad cats. Finally, Hoffman has grasped this. He's 100% right about the second millennium of Christianity. Unfortunately, he's completely wrong about the first millennium of Christianity. And I say that not to be rude. I'm not being mean or offensive to Michael Hoffman. It's just simply I think that he's not spent a significant amount of time in the first millennium of the Church Fathers. I spent 13 years in the first millennium of the Church Fathers. Thousands of pages of those volumes over there. So I know what I'm talking about. I'm not the most learned church patristics person in the world. There are plenty of patristic scholars out there who know way more than me. But I put a lot of time into that. And he is absolutely on point in that second millennium. In fact, I was having a big sort of quandary as to how do we understand the issue of the Jesuits, right? Because obviously this sort of Seventh-day Adventist Messianic Judaism view of how the Jesuits control everything in the world, that's really stupid. But it's partially right? I mean, there are influential Jesuits. Jesuits have had power. So what's the correct view here? And I think Hoffman finally solved that in that book. Now, he doesn't spend like the majority of the book on Jesuits. But once you understand what's in that book, then you can understand how the Jesuits adopt the Hermetic perennialism idea of how to enculturate and do all that stuff, right? And I'm not saying that every sense of enculturation is wrong. There's some of this in Orthodoxy. What I'm getting at is not enculturation being the problem, but rather the adoption of Hermeticism. That's the problem, and that is what happens in Rome. So what Michael Hoffman has finally figured out is what I figured out. And he's right. I'm not saying he got this from me. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that what I was realizing in James Kelly and in God, History, and Dialectic, and then when you read Stan Eloy and you read Gregory Palamas and you realize their critiques of the West are true, which leads you directly to orthodoxy, obviously, you start to see the problem in the second millennium and why the Western Church adopted Hermeticism. And the theses there are 100% true. It's right. That's the solution. These are big questions that people have not had answers to for freaking hundreds of years, man. This is big stuff. And that's the answer. So pretty amazing that we're seeing this kind of stuff being written and discovered. We're living at a time of, like, huge revelations, I mean, partly through the internet and people researching on the internet. So there's a good side and a bad side to the internet. But anyway, yes, it's definitely a black pill for trads. And the trad cats, man, boy, they get mad at me. I sure do make the trads mad, don't I? They get furious and then they eventually convert. So that's good. I'm glad you're mad, because you trad cats that are getting mad, I'm hitting on something. And by the way, I am invited to an informal trad church. I'm not going to say which one, in the Roman sphere of things. It's an informal invite. And I will be debating the entire church. There are some prominent people at this church. I'm not going to say where it is. It is traditional Roman Catholic Church. It's in communion with Rome. It's not Seda. And I'm going to be debating basically the entire church there on these issues. That's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully we can maybe record this in some way. I don't know if they're going to be willing to do that. It may be that they're inquiring, in a more subtle sense. But I'm going to be a legate there to basically debate an entire Roman Catholic Church. I actually kind of did this a couple years ago. I didn't debate a whole church, but it was kind of like a whole, not a youth group, Catholic singles group invited me to come debate in a way in St. Louis. That was a lot of fun. This is something similar. We'll see what happens this summer. Shauna says, I listened to a commentary. Yeah, Frank's Romans feudalism decline. Yeah, I think, if you've heard me do recent interviews where we talk about this, yeah, I think there's something to that thesis. Go back to my old interview with James Kelly, the zombie mass. And it gets into the Frankish thesis, because the Frankish thesis ties into the changes in the West under the Carolinians. Filioque, denying paedo communion. It's not accidental. Rejection of icons. It all happens at the same period. 800s, Carolinians, right? Exactly. And it ties into the Franks. Yep. It's true. Now, I don't know if every aspect of it's true. Okay, it can be oversimplified a bit. But yes, there's something to it. And by the way, a great citation that I saw supporting it is St. Photius has a section. I'm trying to think of where it is. In one of his letters, St. Photius has a section where he talks about the Frankish monks beginning to spread the filioque in Orthodox areas. Yeah. And that, to me, suggested, yes, there's definitely something to this, not just being a historic theory, but you can actually find direct sources back to Photius the Great discussing this being spread by Frankish monks. Anyway. Well, I'm getting hungry, and we're winding down here. As I said, tomorrow we'll have part 2, which will be Pentagon brain analysis for subscribers at Jay's Analysis. If anybody else has any questions, this is the last chance. I'll give it a couple more minutes. We'll listen to this great goofy song. I don't even know. Spiritual Sky, I guess, is who does this. some weird Russian or Croatian synth band from the 80s. We'll listen to a little bit of this. And again, thank you guys. Remember to go to Warski Scream. I can't say my awes. Warski Stream Friday night. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be intellectual. It's going to be funny. It's going to be goofy. It's going to be dramatic and wild with these We Was Kangs. Wakanda. We're going to get some people from Wakanda on the stream. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Check that out. Any last questions? Don't see any more super chats, so I guess we'll call it a night with that Croatian synthwave. Thank you guys very much. A lot of fun. War Games was a lot of fun. God bless, and look for Warski Stream. Hopefully my co-hosting will be worthwhile. It'll be a lot of fun. Bolik Cuba. And I guess we will call it